78%. 78% of technology leaders report more production incidents after deploying AI-generated code, even though 93.5 say that the code appears to be higher quality during review. AI is helping businesses move faster than ever, but speed without confidence creates new challenges. How do you know the decisions you aren't making are actually the right ones? This isn't just a technical problem. Marketing teams are facing the same reality. We have more data, richer customer signals, and more technical capabilities than ever before. Turning all that information and possibility into decisions you can trust is the biggest challenge in modern marketing. So, how can you turn your data into decisions that you can trust? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and today joining me is Katrina Wong, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at New Relic. She's been through 7 exits over her 25 years leading marketing organizations at companies like Twilio, Salesforce, and SAP. And today, Katrina shares how AI is changing the way marketers make decisions. Katrina, welcome to the MarTech podcast.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for having me on.
Very excited to have you here. First off, you've been through 7 exits, been wildly successful in your career, and somehow you decided to land into a place where your customer set is the type of customer that is notoriously against marketers marketing to them. Why would you make this decision?
Benjamin, I like challenges. And after many years in the workforce, I think that unless I'm challenged, I'm not learning and growing. So it's been fun. And fun fact, this is actually my third company where we market to developers and they are the practitioners. So
You
there we
are
are.
a absolute glutton for punishment. New Relic is a wonderful company. It does a great job marketing. I think you might be mildly insane, but I am thrilled that you are here and that we get to talk about turning data into decisions. So you've been through a few things, like I said, 7 exits and a whole bunch of companies that we've all heard of. As the lead marketer, you've seen multiple technology waves. What is it about the AI transition in technology that makes you more energized than the previous technological changes?
Oh, wow. It's the pace that we're able to move. And at the end of the day, for marketers, we've always wanted to innovate and move faster and really put our customers first. I call it the value exchange. What value are we truly providing to our customers in exchange for their time? And prior to AI, it just took a lot of work to do the mechanics of marketing. Data was harder to find, decision making was oftentimes delayed. And so we weren't moving as fast, and maybe we didn't target correctly or we didn't get our message right. All of that has been so exciting for all of us in marketing these days with AI.
I feel like there's 3 camps when it comes to this transitions. There's the people who are like, "This is gluttonous. I can do everything. I have all of the information. The technical hurdles are gone. I built agents. They do the work for me. AI is amazing. I'm in this camp." There's the people who are like, "Okay, this is complex. I struggle to learn a new thing, but it's starting to make my existing processes better." And then there are the people who are like, "No, this is terrible. I am so overwhelmed with possibilities." Where do you see a New Relic stands, and where do you see most marketers in that camp?
I would say for us in marketing, here at New Relic, because our product also has AI infused throughout it, we're very AI forward. We can't claim AI native, but every day we're feeling like we're more and more AI first. So there's creating and leveraging AI in how we want to solve problems for our customers. So as marketers, we do walk the talk. And what you're alluding to is really change management. So in other words, when there is a change, people learn and adopt differently at different paces. So we've done a lot within the marketing team. Year one, we made it very, very safe. So I joined 2 years ago where the AI that was in practice was really ChatGPT and maybe some wrapper applications around ChatGPT. So we made it really, really safe for marketers to learn together. And we started simply with just a bottoms up approach. And I said to the team, we are all going to learn this together. It is not scary. And let's do a bunch of lunch and learns, right? We're going to teach each other. Let's figure out the use cases that really help us. And then soon that turned into my monthly town halls where we had an AI showcase. And I'm so pleased to say 2.5 years later, we're still doing it. And guess what? It's the most subscribed part of my marketing town halls. We are having a lot of fun.
So you've gone through this change management, and look, New Relic is probably not the best example of the typical marketing team because of the technical complexity of your product and who you're marketing to. I'm assuming that you have a super advanced marketing team that is very technical and that they're probably very excited about making the change to AI. So I want to ask you a little bit about the way that your team has made the change, not about sort of the personality stuff. Specifically, talk to me about how the data feeding your marketing organization has fundamentally changed in the post GPT era.
Yes. So that has always been a little bit painful getting the right data. And there's different types of data. There's being able to automate a trade show list of names and that upload. It sounds so boring and mechanical, but you can lose half your leads when that upload fails. And what do you do? Right. So that's very mechanical. Then there's leveraging chat GPT like capabilities where getting the data that perhaps we create, for example, the product marketing team for sales, instead of sales pinging on Slack product marketers as they are preparing for their sales calls because they want to figure out the right value pillar to use. We've created a way, and frankly, for that, we use Gemini Gems, a way for the reps themselves to ask AI what they need, and everyone's happier, right? So it's also, us creating data as marketers and disseminating that to our stakeholders. So that's been really needle moving, and that's been really cool to see.
I feel like there's the three different stages that you just highlighted. One is how do we get access to the data and fixing the mechanical portion.
Yep,
Two is how do we ask questions to the data when we need something? And then the third wave is how do I get the data delivered to me so in advance I know, or how do I use my agents to ask it questions about what data I actually need to have a conversation?
that's right.
Uh, we're at opposite ends of the marketing spectrum. I'm a guy in his garage. You're running New Relic's marketing team. Drastically different, yet only a couple miles apart. Um, and it's funny, I was faced with this challenge today where somebody asked me in a sales call, how do you think about your audience profile, like more B2B, more B2C? And I've been using the same assumption based messaging that of who our audience was. And I was like, I don't need to do that anymore. I can go and ask my agent, hey, look through all the data sources we have and come up with an understanding of where we skew B2B and B2C. I always said we're 50-50. Maybe we skew slightly more towards B2B. Turns out it's like 70% B2B. Who knew? I was totally
That's
wrong on my
right.
data sources. But I had to ask my agent, go
Yes.
look at the data sources and tell me my information.
We are getting insights all day long. Like a lot of our sales calls are recorded. So the insights, I mean, the old way before AI, we were interviewing reps, maybe customers for win loss scenarios and how we could have done better so that I could tailor our messaging and positioning. And now when we analyze these calls, we're like, okay, here's what the humans are saying for what they perceive to be the issue. And here's what AI is saying. And it's been nice to use both the AI analysis, right, of qualitative information as well as triangulating that with a human. So that's been really cool to see. It does give us an extra unbiased layer of information.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
interesting. You're turning your qualitative data into quantitative by
that's right.
moving the call recordings into something AI is analyzing.
Yes.
And then you're essentially still doing qualitative, like your win-loss analysis and seeing if they're matching. Are they the same? Like, are what people inferring from a win-loss call the same as what AI is saying that happened on a call?
I suspect that it might be a sampling error, right? Meaning I can only do a certain number of interviews, or my team can, within a quarter versus us being able to look at thousands of calls that we've made, but it is slightly different.
Tell me a little bit about the differences.
So perceived pricing and packaging, like, hey, we think it's a pricing and packaging issue, but actually it's not. It's usage of a certain feature that we're hearing more. So there is the normal human bias, I think, when it comes to selling or in any of our roles. So that's been really interesting to see.
It's the
Yeah.
Glenn Ross problem where,
Yes, yes.
sales blames marketing for the bad leads and marketing blames sales for not being able to close. Tell me a little bit about how you're turning data into better signals. You have more of it, you're able to analyze it. Is it helping you make better decisions?
It is, in one was perhaps one of our first use cases was in our self-service funnel and with product-led growth. And so in order to create this flywheel, you are always looking to remove friction and answer questions and so on and so forth. So before AI, at best, maybe there's a non AI power chat if you have that, or maybe it's a support ticket, so high bar to, kind of press the button and try to get an answer. So I was an early adopter of OneMine, and what we ended up doing, I was a co-design partner of some sort, right? And they had this notion of an avatar. And that's when I went to Amanda and said, that might be too much so early on. I don't doubt that maybe one day that will work. But for us right now, can you just make the interface like an orb, not very intrusive, similar to how ChatGPT was doing it at the time? And that's done wonders because now we're getting real time signals as someone is walking through a product, onboarding themselves, because with observability, you can do so much. It's a little bit of choose your own adventure. So that's been really nice to take that information and know what it is that's sticking with our customers, plus in real time being able to communicate. So that's been a whole wealth of learnings right there.
I understand the sort of real-time nature of being able to process your data and make decisions and understand what's happening. I think that there's a trust component to it as well. I think of a lot of with marketing teams, like we don't really need an analytics function or an engineering function in some capacities as much as we used to. I can go create my dashboards and I can create my reports and I can get access to my data and I don't need a NoSQL and I don't need an engineer to go build all this stuff. But what I don't necessarily know is if I can trust it. I can get a
That is
report and
true.
I can smell test it. And even if it's more in real time, the concern that I have, and most of the time, I think the marketers are saying, great, I can just go do this. But the question is it right? Like, can you fact check it? Is it something that's sustainable? How do you think about building trust now that we can basically analyze our own data in real time without somebody else, fact checking whether it's correct?
So we recently did this and we are fact checking and we still go back to the source of truth. But with our normal forecasting reports, we were operating using Tableau that plugged into Snowflake that took data from numerous sources, mostly Salesforce. And there were still humans kind of analyzing the data and calculating pacing, so on and so forth. Now, AI does all of that for us, but we are still fact checking because that's just where we are as a community. I still believe in human in the loop for sure. So you're right. Yeah, you're right. We don't know if it's 100% accurate. And maybe one day there'll just be more and more. And I think some companies are doing this on some fronts, a confidence, level or a confidence score. But unless it's 100 when we're talking about revenue, it has to be right. Right. So yeah,
Yeah, I do feel like the efficiencies from using AI and honestly the sort of pleasant nature of just having the work done for you and being able to set it and forget it has
yeah,
raised our error bars. And
that's
and
right.
we will actually say, look, our reporting doesn't have to be 100% accurate because I get it consistently and I can diagnose what, essentially use intuition and a smell check to figure out if it's right or wrong. And I think that, the concern for me is this idea of degradation over time is that if there's a little error up front that you don't recognize, as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's very hard to see. And we have this inherent trust with these new systems. And I think that there is some level of concern about whether they can be trust. How do you think about data accuracy as you're building more AI into your marketing?
Yes. I also want to comment on what you're referring to as the what psychologists are now saying the automation bias. So that first stat that you shared, where everyone's like, more and more code is generated by agents, but yet we think it's great. So there's this inherent trust where the manual job of just doing line by line code review. So the TLDR from that report is something like only 62% of all of the code now is being reviewed in the survey that we conducted and what we found also in our systems. And however, the production failures have gone up. So it shows how strong, right, the automation bias is. So what you're referring to is, not only is um, the output, whether it's code or in the case that we were talking about, data being pulled and generated by AI, it's much easier and less painful for us to trust it. So, what do? It comes back to, we just have to, just like any other habit that you build, I'm a huge fan of atomic habits, right? I love the speed of it, but I'm always still going to check and ensure that we have these checks in place, right? Even if it's like a checklist, because we have to. And that's kind of where we're at.
For me, it's a sanity check on my reportings and actually going back to the single source of truth and fact checking. For
That's right.
you, there's a team of marketers who are building their own reports, and it's probably impossible for you to personally go in and
That
fact
is
check
right.
everybody's
That's right. I hold
analysis.
my team accountable for check.
Well, how do you do that? How do you make sure that when they're creating, analysis or, marketing campaigns based on analysis, that they're actually going back and checking their own work?
I think a couple of things. If it is a campaign, right, I will to spot check. And very recently, actually, even today, I was like, I've been looking in our image library. I'm like, it feels just a little bit off. Like some of our graphics have, I don't know, I don't feel like it's quite on brand. And that's when it hit me. I was like, because I took a look and because the majority of it was being AI generated, right? It was starting to veer off a little bit. So, maybe it's not scalable, forever, but we have to. So, my new saying for marketing is be a good neighbor. If you see something, say something, like be a good neighbor because we have to ensure it is our fiduciary duty to not create AI slop. Right. Use AI, but with great power, right, comes great responsibility.
I feel like your role as the CMO has changed in some ways where it used to be get it the most capable people to produce as much as they possibly can. You
That's
obviously
right.
still want the most capable people, but now your role, instead of getting them and sort of putting them in place and letting them run, you have to essentially be quality police.
We talk about that internally a lot. What's the governance? And so there's some thinking that needs to be done there for most companies as well as ourselves, right? Whether it's agents running amok or overlapping agents and overlapping capabilities or recently I invited a past team member onto my virtual user conference and he was talking about how different agents were updating the same field in Salesforce. So the human problem of okay, maybe marketing wants the data to be this way, sales overrode it, vice versa, and now agents are doing that and he didn't know. So it is something that collectively we have to solve. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about how your access to data is changing, the marketer's capabilities on your team. Talk to me a little bit about the customer point of view. How does the customer experience change now that you've been making all these investments and using AI in your marketing?
I think the end game one day is truly one-to-one marketing and perhaps one-to-one selling because I think as marketers, we've always aspired, getting back to earlier in the conversation, to do really great marketing and truly provide value to exactly what the customer wants. And We haven't always been able to do that. The technology wasn't there. So maybe our campaigns where we thought they were specific, but still a little bit more broad. So that is the vision. Now, with our customers, we've been able to streamline, for example, in self-service, that experience, using one line a lot better. So they experience in a variety of ways. We've been experimenting with using AI and graphic design. And so for one of our data reports that we still do in-person events. And for our top customers, we asked them to join a customer advisory board. And someone was like, "Oh, I love all of your graphics." So we've been able to just iterate and produce more, which then also helps, right, our customers consume in a more delightful way.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I'm taking away from your response is before we were segmenting. What we called personalization was putting someone into a bucket with other people that, looked, smelled, and tasted just like
Oh,
them.
yeah, that's right.
And we are actually able to do personalization now, and that really is the big unlock in terms of how you're using the data to improve the customer experience. Is
100%.
it's a personal customer experience. Talk to me about some of the ways where you're implementing personalization to make something as technical as something as technical as New Relic relevant to the individual person, not their persona.
Yeah, that is a good point. For us, because we are a complex sale and there's usually, account team buying, there's just there's the gathering of information that is pretty hard, right? Like imagine you're doing a sales call and there's like six people and humans are taking the notes. Are you going to jot down everything that everyone says? Now, with call recording and the ability to analyze, that's been game changing because then that allows me to actually do ABM, not just for the account, but down to what different individuals need. So, for example, recently we were talking to a European company, and it was very clear that the different stakeholders in the room, and for some of these larger companies, you have a lot. Someone wanted more strategy and they wanted to understand what we know about retailers and what they were doing in this era, what AI innovations they were doing. And then meanwhile, several other team members just wanted to know what this one product capability would do and if it would do this and that. And I could just imagine the old world where you're in a Zoom or back in the days in a conference room, you're unable to capture all of that information all at once because you're not recording these calls. And these days, it's pretty common to have, calls recorded and have AI kind of tell you what's important. But for me, it's getting the primary data right that will allow you to do better marketing and more targeted marketing, and using AI to produce the pieces too, faster.
As I think about the enterprise sale and how you're going through marketing, it makes sense of like, well, we get somebody in a call and they tell us their pain points and now we have them documented. But also there's a little bit of the buying team mapping where
Yes.
someone wants a strategy, someone wants a technical, analysis, somebody wants alerts for, their mobile app and there's all these different teams. They might not be the financial buyer. You're able to actually map
100%.
that out. And since we have AI to be able to scale marketing, now you can create multiple pieces of collateral that go to each person.
That's right.
Um, are you finding yourself or your marketing team being challenged by the amount of collateral and conversations and sort of the volume that AI is pushing them to? Are you having conversations with 5 different people in a buying org, or is it just one message, one person, and sort of how it was before?
AI has helped with the volume of work, right? But I care that it's more accurate because the input is more accurate. So, it's now more effective, right? So everyone feels like they have something come out of the sales call that's tailored to what they need, right? Because you take out the human bias of what's important and maybe the title. So for the marketers, it's been a little bit more gratifying because it feels more effective. And with the use of AI, they're also able to produce things quicker, prettier, better, more on point. So, yeah, so it's been nice. It's been nice.
You've got your data helping you make better and faster decisions. There's a little bit of trust and sort of governance that now you are responsible for being the sheriff in town, but it's helping you identify pain points and do more personalization. I still go back to your marketing towards engineers, and they hate
Yes.
marketing, and also
Yes.
most of the time
Yes.
hate marketers.
Fun fact, I am married to an engineer. So, fun fact. I don't think he loves what I do. I'm publicly saying this, but yeah, he hates marketing, not what I do specifically, but
I'm sure he loves you and your work and probably hates the role that you're in. But it is a challenging role, and I'm curious to hear how data is helping you earn the attention of the engineering community.
we all strive to be authentic, but in particular, when you are sharing a message, I don't even want to say marketing, sharing a message or communicating to a technical audience, um, it's no jargon, no fluff, and it just has to be authentic. And it also has to solve um, a problem that they care about, and specifically even in a way that they respect, right? The elegance of the solution, right? So you're just gonna have to, the bar is high. You're just gonna have to get very, very concrete and specific and pretty fast. It doesn't mean you can't have, really beautiful taglines that become the hook, but underneath it, you go really deep 101, 201, 301 pretty quickly. So for us, for our last keynote for a user conference, because we are also a data company, meaning we have so much data, observability is about observing what's happening and we capture that as data. We were able to hone in on data insights that substantiate the problem, right? So, to your point about, oh my gosh, more and more code is being written by agents, but yet we think it's all great and we're putting it into production, but the incidents are rising, right? So, we call that agent debt, right? And by so still, we're doing something really clever. We're naming the problem. It's catchy, but we're substantiating it with data. And that's a very foolproof way for marketers. I mean, sorry, for developers. Yeah,
It seems like what you're getting at is that original research is the way that you're implementing data,
that's right.
right? And you're
That's right.
taking and turning the aggregate analysis of what's happening across the industry into information that's valuable to
That's right.
them.
That's
And I guess
right.
the question is, okay, great. You've got this wonderful data source of, whose websites are crashing or what code isn't working or are people shifting from desktop to mobile because of AI. And you can highlight all that information, but how does it actually impact marketing? How do you convert that type of story into not just awareness of the problem, but into, credibility and more business for New Relic?
We do a lot of industry data reports, right? It's one of our highest generating, tactics. We run some campaigns around that, but people do see hungry for, am I missing out on something that I should know about? We actually do briefings of these data reports as part of our customer advisory board. So we do put a wrapper around the data and produce an asset that, our audience likes genuinely and engages with.
Yeah, fundamentally, even when you're doing something like using your data to support your customers through original research, we are all getting more technologically advanced. We are all using more data sources, using it to create a reporting, using it to build better customer experience, all of the things. Fundamentally, what I'm hearing from you is that there's a community aspect to this, and that when you are a good active member of the community, you're producing original research that supports the engineering community, that
A
helps
hundred
build
percent.
brand, that what fosters trust, and that's really what makes the connection beyond just this personalization and conversion metric type mindset. It's really a community building strategy as much as it is anything.
That's right. That's right. It's not transactional. We don't want to just market to you. It's the value exchange I was getting to earlier. What value are we offering in exchange for your time? So, whenever you can help your audience learn in any way shape, or form, that's a win.
Okay, Katrina, I want to move on to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you a couple of MarTech questions related to this topic's week, which is the usage of data to make better decisions. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Agree or disagree? Gardner predicts that by 2028, the AI tools developed could cost more than developers themselves.
Disagree, because it's almost assuming that nothing changes between now and 2028. And I think Jensen recently said, hey, how much you're spending on tokens should be the cost of your developer. But as humans, we're quite innovative and we're going to somehow solve this, which is make sure that AI is not cost prohibitive for business. And there's been so much recent discussion. I mean, this is just, what the community is talking about right now about using open models, so on and so forth. So I am convinced that because everything is accelerated in AI, that by 2028, we would have figured out as a community so that AI can be a little bit more affordable.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's no way that people are going to be paying $250,000 a year for AI and tokens. There is too much competition
That's
for the
right.
business
That's right.
for that to happen. What I think will end up happening in 2028 is that the people who are building and are using their agents and are effective will be able to do a whole bunch. There's also the people that are not, essentially the non-adopters or laggards, that are really going to struggle. And so it's not that engineering is going to be as expensive as your engineer, it'll be relatively inexpensive, but the people that are doing it are going to do a ton. And then there's going to be less developers or less engineers, and that's going to make people go through some sort of change. Any other predictions for what might happen in the next couple of years?
Maybe we will get to one-to-one marketing and one-to-one selling where it's highly personalized. That would be, the goal, I think, for those of us that are in marketing, or at least my goal.
Next question. If platforms like OpenAI focus on advertising for monetization, what do you think is going to change about your spend in marketing budget?
I do agree that we will move in that direction over time, and that from what I can see now, that LLMs will be perhaps the default for how we find answers. There's been a lot of adoption for both business users, the everyday person, technical team members, etc. So I do think traditional channels, maybe it is the death of the SEM as we know it. So with my team, I've encouraged the team, and I was like, look, you know, forget the ROI just quite yet. Let's take a small piece of our budget and experiment. So we are part of OpenAI's like beta chat GPT app program right now. It's not quite yielding the results in the same way yet as some of the other channels, but you're always going to have to invest in, your hypothesis of where um, the market's going to go.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a place for putting your message in digital channels in front of people in exchange for your dollars. Paid
Yes, yes,
advertising is
yes.
not going away.
Agreed.
And I think that's always going to be a consumer facing product solution. What I think is interesting about what's happening now is we're seeing more usage of AI, right? People are developing their own agents. I think of this kind of like Claude's mindset versus GPTs, and maybe that's not fair, but I am using Claude to develop my agents. I know there's Codex, you can do the same thing. I'm never going to see the advertisements because I'm not the one going to the websites. But my parents, who are going to go to Google or maybe even AOL at this point, who knows, are still going to be exposed to the advertising. So I think it depends on the sort of surface that you're interacting in. You will still be able to get ads, or you'll still be able to serve ads
100%.
to people. But that sort of value exchange and who and when and where is dramatically going to shift.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of happened with television to streaming to I no longer see ads, but then when I watch the Super Bowl or the World Cup, I was like, "Oh wait, this is what commercials look like," and I quite enjoy them. So, I know. We'll see what happens.
It's fun in the Super Bowl. It's annoying when it's every television show you watch being the same ad over and over
Yes,
again.
yes, fewer ads, fewer
It's
ads.
funny, take my kids on vacation, and if they don't have Netflix on the, like, hotel TV, they're like, "Dad, what's with all the ads? It's the same thing over and over again." I'm like, "Welcome to the '90s, my friend. This
Yes,
is what it was like for
the
me too."
best decade, the
Yeah,
best decade.
okay. You've been through 7 successful exits. What's the one metric acquirers scrutinize that most marketers completely overlook?
Well, there's today, because we've been talking so much about AI. I think it's the cost of doing business now that AI is just part of doing business for those of us, in tech and kind of an early adopter. So it's really understanding how much you're spending on AI and the cost of doing business in this new world and staying competitive. So in other words, it's COGS with AI factored in. I really think that's the new puzzle.
It's funny, I was thinking about this today. We have been using the same transcription company for 5 years. Whenever we do a meeting, I don't wanna air them out, but a company shows up and writes down what we say and then sends us the file. And I think I pay like $200 a month. This is company of one for these transcriptions, and we do it across like 7 or 8 different podcasts, so it's a bunch of different what looks like users to them. And the question is, should I spend, half a day rebuilding this to lower my cost of goods sold? And then now I have an agent that's doing the same thing. And what ends up being less expensive or more expensive? And there's this time and value exchange. I could lower my COGS, but I have to invest more time in building it. Then I have to maintain it. And then my AI expense and my token usage goes up. How do you think about finding that balance?
Yes, we talk about this internally a lot, the buy versus build. So we do have active conversations about what agents do we build versus do we wait for someone to come out with AI that's going to help us solve our problems. So, for example, we're not building agents to run campaigns like end to end. We kinda think someone's gonna solve that, and we're just kinda waiting for that. Now, different handoffs between different sub-functions within marketing, we're starting to streamline and do some agent orchestration. So it is yeah, I don't necessarily have an answer, but it's an active conversation about what do you actually buy versus build. So it's a interesting time now.
What's the one piece of marketing technology you think most teams could stop paying for tomorrow?
Great question. I didn't realize how many applications we had where it's just a data repository with maybe a light interface for everyone to log into. So, for example, I'm not going to share the name of the company, but we just turned off our subscription for. It's an application for competitive intelligence. And prior to AI, it was my competitive intelligence team inputting the latest competitive intel, and the sales was required or if when they wanted to, log in and just read it. Um, it didn't have I feel bad saying this, but it didn't have the most easy to use interface, etcetera. So all of that has been replaced. My head of competitive intel actually built, I wanna say it was like 85 agents or so that will go out and gather the competitive intel and we put it into it's the output can be right like one pagers, right, information for the field, but it's also in a Gemini gem where it's interactive, and so the updates are in real time, and so the field just doesn't have to as much over Slack ping this competitive intel team. So it's been really nice. We've been able to move faster. So that was an actual subscription that we canceled.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of the things that are going away are the things that are UI based. Right. Well, I used to have to go and it was really hard to get access to the data. And so look, they put it in a dashboard and I could drag and drop and move things around, filters and pivot tables or whatever like now you can customize all of your reporting. So the UI functionality seems to me to be the thing that's going away. You can easily get access, manipulate, and draw up your own data. So I
I
think that
know.
sort of the shiny polish in front is the thing that I think goes away soon.
Yeah, agree, agree.
Okay. Last question for you. Is AI more like a tool or an operating system to you?
Operating system, because I do think that over time, and it gets closer and closer every day, that it's powering more and more, and maybe one day everything we do. At the end of the day, it's this intelligence layer that it's just going to be super foundational as like the premise of where we start. That's what I think.
I think everybody's sort of heard the notion of this data layer, and that's really what AI is. It's the interface that allows you to extract and visualize your data layer. And to me, like AI is definitely much more like an operating system, maybe than a series of tools. Once they start talking to each other, and I think of it as like for me, our workflows are I've got a chief of staff that's an agent. I have a podcast builder that does our onboarding that's an agent. When they can start talking to each other, now we're actually in operating system territory as opposed to customized workflows.
Amazing. But you bring up a good point. The data layer is still super important. So having data that's clean, AI is only as good as your data. So that is still super important. It's not just AI by itself.
Katrina, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate your time, and obviously you've done a lot of things very right in your career to be in the point that you are. Thank you for coming on the show and telling me and the audience a little bit about how you think about turning data into decisions.
Thank you, Benjamin. It's been a pleasure.
All right, that wraps up this episode of the MarTech podcast. Thanks to Katrina Wong, the Chief Marketing Officer at New Relic. If you'd like to contact Katrina, you can find a link to her LinkedIn profile in our show notes or on martechpod.com, or you can visit her company's website, which is newrelic.com. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or on YouTube, and we'll be back in your podcast feed next week. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.